Hello. I will be narrating 3 mysterious stories for you tonight. So sit back, relax, and listen. My dog's final goodbye, 1 year after his death. So, my dog died around 2 years ago. He was a golden lab mixed with a German shepherd, lived to about 12 years old, and we had to sadly put him down as he had bladder cancer. Due to his bladder cancer, and due to being a dog, I guess, he would bark in the night to be let out to pee in the backyard. It was always my dad who would be the one to hear him and let him out, since his bedroom window overlooked the backyard. So a year after my dog's death, my dad is awoken at about 3 a.m. by my dog's distinct "let me out to pee" yelp, and groggily stands up and starts walking to go let him out. My dad getting up wakes up my mom, who asks my dad where he's going. To let the dog out. Cue mom telling my dad that the dog has been dead for a year. My dad confusingly remembering / snapping out, awake to the present, and then turning around to walk back to bed. The next morning, my mom remembers that it is the anniversary to the day of my dog's death. I'd hoped to think he was just letting us know that he's okay. The 2-year anniversary of his death is coming up in a few months. Maybe we'll hear from him again. He was such a good boy. This concludes the end of the first story. If you're having a pleasant experience, be sure to subscribe and like the video. It'll help me to grow and reach a larger audience. Thank you. Time stood still for what felt like 30 seconds. This just happened. As I'm sitting here at my desk typing away, suddenly my computer freezes. I try to move the mouse cursor and nothing happens. This happens fairly frequently as my company hasn't bothered to replace the computers here for a while, so I didn't think much of it. I look down at the taskbar clock and it reads 8:38 a.m. I'm considering getting up and going to the restroom while my computer does its thing, but as I stand up, my lava lamp on my desk catches my eye. One of the descending, or ascending, who knows, blobs is suspended in the middle of the glass, completely frozen. It's at that moment that I realize it's completely silent all around me. My desk clock is no longer ticking. My light-activated desk toys aren't moving back and forth and making their normal noises. None of my coworkers are making a sound. Everything around me has stopped. So, I'm sitting there just trying to process what's happening and think to get up and go see my coworker on the other side of the cubicle, to even see if they're at their desk. As I stand up, I hear my desk toys start clicking back and forth. I hear the tick-tock from the clock. The blobs in the lava lamp are moving again. I look up at the time on my computer and it reads 8:39 a.m. I reach for the mouse and see that the cursor now moves. My coworkers were, as far as I could tell, all at their desks while time had froze. What in the hell just happened? A little more detail about what happened to me. Well, I'm pretty sure my coworkers were at their desks while this happened. I don't know for sure because it all happened so quickly. Like I mentioned, as soon as I realized something was amiss, I stood up to check on the person on the other side of the cubicle wall. Everything popped back into motion. This wasn't a split-second thing either. It already had to have been close to 20 or 30 seconds. Time wasn't suspended for a long time. I know that much. But it was so surreal and felt like it was longer than it really was. But anyway, what freaked me out the most was the lava lamp. Seeing the glob of whatever it is inside the lava lamps suspended in the middle of the glass, not moving up or down, totally suspended in time, was so weird. This isn't how gravity works. The solar-powered desk toys frozen to the side, as if they were suspended mid-swing, no longer making their usual click, click, click sound, was so unnerving. Everything was just silent around me, just so weird. and it's never happened before. Honestly, I'm equal parts scared and intrigued. I died in late 2015. I was given a second chance. I've never used Reddit before, but a friend of mine was talking to me about the glitch in the Matrix subreddit, so I decided to share my story here, since I don't have any explanation for it almost 3 years later. Rewind back to September 2015. I was a freshman who had just entered high school 2 weeks prior. Already school was weighing down on me, and I'd been continuing a habit ahead of going on walks to clear my mind. On this day, I'd been walking around a pond near my house. There's a trail that goes around the pond, and then the trail leads up to a set of abandoned train tracks on the other side, which sits about 15 feet above the path and below the pond. After walking the circle, I was crossing the train tracks where I decided I wanted some ice cream. The fastest way to go to the ice cream shop was to take the path below the train tracks. But there isn't any way to cross the pond without going all the way back around, and being 14 years old, I decided that I could just jump from the tracks onto the path below and keep walking. Looking down from above, it didn't seem to be that far of a jump, so that's what I did. The next thing I remember after that was being half-conscious in an ambulance. Everything was extremely blurry, and the paramedics sounded slightly panicked. I wasn't able to move either of my legs, so I think they were both broken. This scene continued on for a few minutes, until we arrived at the hospital and I was wheeled into the emergency room on a stretcher. I only had a few minutes in the emergency room before I eventually lost all consciousness, and that was the last thing I saw. After I'd been unconscious for what felt like about an hour, I opened my eyes and I was on the ground. I just hit the ground after jumping, but this time I was fully conscious. I hadn't noticed this before I jumped, but there had been a car parked watching me. I think they thought I was attempting suicide, but it probably only looked that way. And the people in it had jumped out and called an ambulance for me. The ambulance ride had been the exact same as it was in the quote-unquote first time, and it was put into the same emergency room that I had died in, quote-unquote. The only difference between the two events were that I was fully conscious this time, and my injuries were much more minor. I was discharged from the hospital at the same time that night, with only stitches in my lip, a slightly fractured jaw, and a mild concussion. For a while after this, I assumed that the first scenario had just been a weirdly coincidental dream, that it'd been a while I was unconscious, so I didn't consider it anything abnormal. It wasn't until a few weeks after, when my mom told me that the people who had helped me said that I had been unconscious the entire time. I hadn't been knocked out after hitting the ground or anything, so that entire scenario managed to happen in the few seconds it took me to hit the ground, while I was still conscious. Anyways, I'm not very good at describing things, especially with how blurry this day was, now that it was years ago. But I'm 17 now, and I still have no way to explain what happened that day, other than I died, and was given a second chance.